Hello again, it's me, Natus from Drum and Bass Academy, and today we're going to talk a bit more about harmony, as we have been doing. However, we're going to take a slightly different angle to the last couple of videos, where we've talked mostly about the notes specifically, but today we're going to talk about harmonic rhythm. And now you might think rhythm and harmony are quite separate things, rhythm particularly having more to do with drums, and then harmony having more to do with chords. Well, they're actually very interrelated things, and we already know this intuitively from, say, if we have a nice chord or a voicing we've been working on. It doesn't always work if you just place it randomly in the bar. There might be a certain time when you want it to play, and other times when it's not going to sound so good. And so the timing of chords is actually just as important as the notes themselves. In fact, you can have a very, very standard basic chord sound really, really nice just because it has a very interesting rhythmic grouping to it. So there's lots to explore here. Before we get started, if you'd like to know a bit more about our other free resources, definitely check out the link in the description below. That'll take you to the DNB Academy free access page. There's tons of free masterclasses, as well as some amazing free sample and preset packs, and some free ebooks to help you improve at your mixing, mastering, and sound design. And whilst we're at it, please consider hitting the subscribe button and ding the bell if you want more notifications about future tutorials, as well as more music theory advice from me. So today what we're going to do is we're just going to take a couple of breaks. These are from the DNB Academy Discord breaks. And we're just going to analyze their rhythmic grouping a little bit. So what are the kind of common rhythmic values, sort of groups of hits? Then we're going to take that information and we're going to try and take some chords and match that rhythm, or interpret it in a way and see if we can maybe add a little bit of a rhythmic dialogue between our chords and our drums. So let's take this first one and have a listen. So the first thing I'm listening for is the main kit pieces, so the really emphatic stuff like kicks and snares. And I'm wanting to listen if there's any regularity about the way they're hitting. Now, with the kick drum, it sounds like it pretty much always comes on beat 1. We haven't got really a second kick drum in the bar, it's just always on that first beat. And sometimes there is a little ghost note beforehand on a 8th note. So there's not too much going on in the kick. However, in the snare drum, it starts on beat 2, and rather than the second snare drum being on beat 4, as is kind of standard in drum bass, this is a slightly alternative pattern with a dotted 8th note. So we've got that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 sort of pattern going on. So that's quite an interesting syncopation, and I want to take advantage of that in my chords. So there's two ways to go about this. I could start thinking of trying to match up my chords with the rhythm so that they're all doing one thing. Or I could try and create, like I said earlier, a bit of a dialogue. We're going to do both. So let's start firstly with the fairly stock and standard and just have them match up. So we could do something like that, where we've got the kick drum whole note on this F minor chord, and then we have this dotted 8th note rhythm in the second two chords. Like that. So we can match that up, and then that makes the whole track feel like it's all working together. Now, because it's a syncopated rhythm in that snare drum, Maybe a way that we can think about an alternative harmonic rhythm being a kind of dialogue with that is to have a very not syncopated rhythm. Seems we've got a lot of those dotted notes going on. Maybe let's just have something straight, something really rigid, so that it makes the drums feel a little bit more alive, and everything else becomes that sort of rhythmic grounding around which the drums will dance a little bit. So let's try that. You see how different that feels? It feels like the drums are a lot lighter now, and everything is a bit more skippy, a bit more dancey, and yeah, it has a bit more of a sprightly feel to it. So it's interesting how that interplay between the rhythm of the chords and of the drums actually changes how we perceive what's going on in the music. Okay, let's look at our next break. So this is quite the opposite of the first one. It's very, very straight. There's no syncopation in there at all. We do have that very sparse kick drum pattern again, where there's only one kick drum at the beginning of every 2 bars actually, so that's really sparse. And then we have a little paradiddle or something at the end, little on the snare drum, just a tiny fill. Those things are quite helpful in terms of programming our notes. We can add a little extra or something like that. But yeah, so we've got our 2 approaches again. We can think we can have our chords and our beat match up really closely, or we can have them dialoguing a little bit more. So as we did last time, let's start with just having them match up. So that's probably not the most interesting thing we could do, but it definitely sounds like it works. It's not offensive to us. It doesn't sound bad. It's just maybe not the most interesting. Maybe we could do something a little more interesting. Maybe let's take that dotted 8th note idea from the first break, have it so that there's a little bit of a polyrhythm going on between the punctuation of our chords and their very straight snare drum hits. So we could have something like that, and that's definitely more groovy, more interesting, and I would prefer that and probably use that more than the first one. Okay, let's have a look at our last break. Okay, so I think we'll all recognize this as pretty standard. We've got a kick drum on beat 1, and we've got another punctuation of the kick on the and of 3. And then we also have a snare drum pattern, which is just a 2 and 4 snare drum. So really, really standard here. So what we could do is, like I say, we can match up those chords. That'll be very, very standard. Or we can do something a bit straighter than that, because we have a kick drum on the and of 3. It's creating a bit of syncopation. So maybe we could just have our chords on the downbeats. I think that about wraps it up. If you've enjoyed today's video and you'd like to support the channel, definitely consider getting one of our products. We have some amazing preset bundles. We also have some really helpful producer bundles where they'll teach you how to make a track from scratch with included samples and presets. And on the topic of samples and presets, if you'd like to know more about our preset pass, check out the link in the description below. So that's the main idea there, is try and analyze your rhythms first, and then see when you're coming to writing your chords if you can make them either dialogue or match up. And when you match them up, it tends to make the drums sound a bit more weighty. The whole texture has a bit more impact. Whereas if you start dialoguing between them and having polyrhythms or sort of maybe a slight canon going on where the rhythms are delayed in one part versus the other, those sorts of things can make the drums feel a bit more light and a bit have a bit more of a dance to them and a groove. So I hope you're able to take those ideas away and come up with some interesting rhythms and chord progressions. But for the meantime, this has been me, Natus, and I'll see you in the next one.